Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Newburyport Literary Festival. My name is Jennifer Entwistle, and I am the co-director of the festival. And if you recognize the woman behind me, then you are in the right place. So this is our 16th year of bringing authors and readers together. And this year is actually our biggest festival ever. We've got over 100 panelists speaking this weekend. So hopefully you've already seen a few events this morning that you've enjoyed, but there is plenty more the rest of this afternoon and all day tomorrow. So I hope that we'll see you at some other events as well. We are using Zoom webinar, which means that you can see the panelists, but we cannot see or hear you. So I encourage you to use the chat mechanism to have discussion throughout the event. But if you do have any questions for Elizabeth, then please use the Q&A button that's at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we will have time for Q&A at the end of this session. I also want to just remind you that today is Independent Bookstore Day. So we hope that you'll be buying this book and others from the festival at your local independent bookseller. And we have two partnering booksellers for the festival, Jabberwocky Bookshop here in Newburyport, Massachusetts, and the Bookshop of Beverly Farms. So once we get started with the event, I'm going to put links to those two bookshops in the chat. And we would love it if you would buy your books there. But if you have a local favorite, then by all means, support your local independent bookseller. So we're all here to talk about Royal Style. So it's my pleasure to introduce our two speakers. So we have Elizabeth Holmes, the author of HRH, here with us. She has spent more than a decade on staff at the Wall Street Journal, covering the business and messaging of fashion. Since leaving the paper in 2017, she has written for a variety of national outlets, including the New York Times, In Style, Real Simple, Business of Fashion, and Vogue International. She gained acclaim for her popular Webby-honored Instagram stories series, So Many Thoughts. She lives outside of San Francisco with her husband and 3 children. And speaking with her today is Ray Smith. He is a lifestyle reporter for the personal journal section of the Wall Street Journal. He was a fashion reporter for the Wall Street Journal from 2005 to 2020. He still writes the occasional fashion story, but his beat has expanded to cover how individuals are navigating lifestyle during the pandemic and as we emerge from the pandemic. So welcome, Elizabeth and Ray.
It's so good to be here. Thank you for having us.
Hi, Elizabeth. Welcome.
Hey, Ray. So I'll just start by saying that Ray and I used to sit next to each other, like kitty corner from each other for years. And so it's such a treat, Ray, to see you again.
Likewise, likewise. And congratulations on the book. It's really wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a fun ride.
Well, I'd like to start out with some recent news and some sad news, actually. We had the passing of Prince Philip, R.I.P. Prince Philip. And I was hoping you can talk about, I know it seems odd to ask you this, but the symbolism behind what Kate wore that day.
Yeah, absolutely. So my book and my sort of focus for the last couple of years has been on royal fashion. And that's because it is steeped with meaning. These women pick what they wear very carefully. It's designed to send a message and it gets a ton of attention. And so if you think back to Prince Philip's funeral last weekend, obviously there was international news coverage of the event, but certainly what Kate was wearing was part of that coverage. And I think that says it all right there. She was wearing a necklace in particular that got a ton of attention. It belongs to the Queen. Princess Diana had worn it. Kate had worn it before. She had worn it to in a private engagement that was celebrating Elizabeth and Philip's 70th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
And so it's all very purposeful, right? She steps out and, we didn't hear from Kate that day. She didn't talk, nobody did. But we see pictures, right? They're everywhere. They're blasted around the world in seconds. And when you see something like that, it says a lot. And I think that therein sort of encapsulates the power of royal fashion.
Is there anything to say about what Queen Elizabeth wore? As unseemly as it might seem to ask that, is there some symbolism behind what she wore?
No, I think it's yes. I mean, I think we can have a conversation about why people pay so much attention to what women wear and especially royal women, but they know that and they use it. It's a big part of their public image. And Queen Elizabeth, throughout her historic reign, has crafted a uniform for herself. I mean, she understands that clothes are part of her duties and that she, that famous quote, she has to be seen to be believed. And so what we saw her wear was a black version of her uniform. I mean, she has, it's sort of it's so standardized that you can kind of put it together in your head. She's always wearing a hat that's big enough to make a statement, but not too big so that it obscures her face. She loves a coat that sort of grazes her shins. She's always wearing a sensible black heel so she can stand for a long time. Pearls are her signature jewelry. She was even wearing, carrying her sturdy black handbag that she always has with her. And I think what's so telling about the Queen and how she's put together her royal uniform is that there's an immense sense of calm in that consistency. When the Queen shows up, you know what she's going to look like. There are no surprises. She doesn't get out of the car and you're like, which one's the Queen? Exactly. And a big part of that is because of her style.
Well, this is one of the things that your book does so well in terms of talking behind the meaning, taking us behind the meaning of what people are wearing, these royals are wearing. I wanted to also just ask you about, with the publication of this book, what it's been like to promote a book during the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, writing, the pandemic started as I was trying to finish the book, and then it came out sort of in the thick of it last November, and it's been quite a ride. I mean, I think it's been really challenging in a lot of ways, but it's also been special and wonderful. I think a lot of people are at home and looking for good books to read, so I think it's a great opportunity too. It certainly wasn't what I thought it would be, but I think it was great in its own way. We had some virtual events, and I think that's a great way to bring people together from all over. And certainly the royal family has an audience that is international. And so we've been able to take advantage of a little bit of that. And yeah, I'm just glad, if I'm being totally honest, I'm glad that it's done and out in the world. It was just such a process for me, especially as a journalist who's used to writing something and publishing it and, a faster churn, that this 18 months was intense, and now it's out and people are enjoying it. And I'm really glad about that.
Can you describe an example of a virtual event that you held? Because that's something that I think other authors are trying to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. So for around lunchtime, it was sort of an extended conversation about how to celebrate the book launch and what to do. So much of what I do is on social media, right? I was a longtime journalist. I started as a freelancer. I started commenting on the royals on Instagram. It took off. I was able to sort of grow my own audience, and that was a real opportunity because I think people were really excited about the book before it came out. And then people wanted to talk about it, right? We all want to get together. I think we're sort of stuck in our homes and craving that community, right? And what was so important to me was that we find a way to support bookstores in the launching of the book too. And so we had 3 different events, and 2 of them were ticketed, and it included a signed copy of the book from an independent bookstore. And that was so important to me because I think so many people are hurting right now. It's been such an intense year, and certainly independent bookstores need our love. And I was glad to send some sales their way.
Now tell me, how did you handle book signings? Because book signings are an iconic part of an author's career and journey. So I just wondered how you handled that.
I did a lot of them here in my bedroom at home. I had asked my publisher, I was like, will you just send me all the books and I'll sign them and we'll send them back. And they were like, this is a big, heavy book. And unless you have a ton of space, that's not going to work. So we did a lot with book plates, which are the stickers you can put on them. And then, we send those off. But then also on my launch day, we reached out to all the bookstores in my part of San Francisco, in the suburbs here. And I wore a mask and went around and signed all their stock too, which was really special because there was so few things I could do in person that would feel safe and appropriate. And so those where I just sort of walked up to the cashier and I was like, I'm an author and I have a book that you're carrying and I'm here to sign it. And they were always like, oh, and I'd pull out my Sharpie and just, sign 10 or 20 copies that they had in stock. And that was really fun. And then we partnered with a bigger local store here to do, to ship out signed personalized copies too and stuff. So there's a way to do it. It's different. And I hope that at some point I can get together with everybody in a big way and celebrate this book. But those little moments were really joyful.
Did you just say at one point, did you just give me a chocolate chip that at one point you went up to a cashier and said you're an author?
Yes, those are like the surreal moment. I mean, because I obviously well, not obviously, but I have three small children, and so I was trying to fit this all in with my husband working too and stuff. And so I would sometimes just go to like a Barnes and Noble on my, like after bedtime. And I remember walking up to a guy, and they had a wonderful display, like a whole tower of my books. And I walked up to a guy, and I was like, I wrote that book, and I'm here to sign them. And he was like, oh, welcome. And it was lovely. It was a real high point.
Well, I commend you in your hustler spirit and being creative during this time.
Yeah.
I really love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, can you take us back to how this originated? You talked a little bit about that, but I remember in the book you saying that the Will and Kate wedding actually introduced you to the House of Windsor. And I remember, we were colleagues, and I remember you suddenly getting interested. So can you take us back to how that started?
Yeah, it's funny. It's their 10th anniversary this week, and it's a real moment for me, I think, because that is definitely when I started paying attention. I mean, I had always been aware of the royal family, but when they got married was the year that I was also getting married, and I suddenly was like, oh, what's happening over there? And I, was up in the middle of the night to watch their wedding, and I just got like totally smitten with the pomp and circumstance of it all. And with Kate and Will and their story, a commoner marrying her prince, I mean, I was just really enthralled and certainly kept tabs on them over the years. I mean, from sitting next to me, like when royal babies were born, I was like glued to that camera on the Lindo wing when they would present their babies, and very distracted from my work at the Journal. But I had never, I was very enthusiastic about the royal family. I had never really, my friends humored me, I think, but I don't know that they shared my level of enthusiasm, certainly. And so when I left the Journal in 2017, that was a hard thing to do. We moved to California, and my husband had a great job opportunity. And I thought, well, gosh, I'd been at the Journal for a decade. It's time to take the leap, try something new. And I was out here hustling as a freelancer. And I started just on a whim, really, on Instagram, commenting on the royal family. And I happened to see a picture of Will and Kate and their kids. And I thought to myself, I have so many thoughts about this. And I just posted. I mean, it wasn't strategic. It wasn't like I was trying to start something, but I got a tremendous response. And what I realized was on social media, you can find your people. I found people that wanted to talk about the royal family with me, and I was so excited. And so Meghan and Harry released their engagement photos a couple of days later. I commented, same thing, huge response. And I just sort of took it from there. And I will say, because I didn't start it strategically, I look back at those early ones and I definitely kind of cringe because I didn't know what I was doing. It was really ugly. I was screenshotting things. My commentary wasn't particularly informed, or maybe it was all about entertainment. And what I realized, over 6 months or a year, is that I could bring my background as a style reporter and understanding the business of fashion, the branding and the marketing and the image building behind it. And I could connect the dots on the royal family and their fashion for people and try and explain what they were trying to say through their clothes. And therein lies the power of fashion. I mean, I really do think that these women, more so than wearing beautiful outfits, which they are, right? They're so fun. They're steeped with meaning, and they like people want that today. I think especially, we're all craving more and doing things really intentionally and thoughtfully. And that's what So Many Thoughts is really about. And that's kind of where the book came from.
So Many Thoughts was a huge success, and I just wonder, how did the book come about? Did an agent reach out to you or notice you on Instagram, or did you reach out, or how did that happen?
Well, so I was commenting on Instagram, like in my own little bubble here. I had my second son, I had a newborn. I mean, it was kind of crazy, but it just kept growing. People really wanted to talk about the royal family, and especially Meghan leading up to the royal wedding in 2018. And I had a number of people approach me. One very clear offer to write a So Many Thoughts book. And I actually said no to that first one. I was working with an agent and the publisher, and I didn't feel like the deal was big enough to do what I wanted to do. I wanted it to be a book that was filled with royal photographs, and royal photographs were very expensive, very expensive. And I just wasn't sure that the people involved sort of understood how big I wanted to make this. And so I ended up saying no. And then I had another person come to me and want to just basically run what I do on Instagram in a book format. And I was like, no, what I do on Instagram is pretty specific. So for those of you who might not be familiar, I take a picture of Kate or Meghan or the Queen sometimes, and I add a bunch of little text bubbles with my sort of informed commentary about what I think their outfit means, and I post it to my Instagram stories. And it's meant to be consumed in a very sort of bite-sized, enjoyable Instagram way. I mean, you're on your phone, it's small, right? And I didn't think that what I was doing on my phone was appropriate for a coffee table book, which is what my vision was. And so I have to give a lot of credit to my now agent, Kate Childs from CAA. She approached me. We've known each other for years. And she was like, I think this could be something really wonderful. And we got together. She happened to be visiting San Francisco, and we got together, and she got it. She saw my vision and what I wanted to do, and that I did not want to make so many thoughts into a book. I wanted to make a book on royal style that was really big and beautiful, and filled with lots of words to read, but also lots of beautiful pictures to look at. And together we made this book.
What an incredible story! My goodness.
I know it's a long one.
No. It's actually, no, it's not long. It's just telling on so many levels, especially the fact that it was your Instagram really that started this and got you noticed. Basically, you got on their radars through it. I wondered if you can talk.
Yeah, no, I just want to add that I like that when I left the journal, it was really hard for me to leave a newsroom of vibrant, talented writers like yourself, Ray. And I was sort of on this, in this bubble out here in California, freelancing by myself, which is it's very different. I mean, it's a lot of the same writing, but you're doing it in your own sort of little cone. And so I was so grateful. I was hungry for somebody that shared the vision for the project. And I was so grateful that I found someone who understood that in my agent, Kate. And so just anybody who's listening and wants to do something like this, say no to that first one was really hard. And I really doubted myself. But if I had gone that route, I wouldn't have what I have today. And so I think about that a lot, and how sometimes saying no is just a really important thing to do.
That's great advice. Thank you for those tips. I'm sure a lot of people could use that and benefit from that. I wondered if you can also talk about this book. You mentioned the word coffee table book before, and I think you handle this really well. This is a book that's both a picture coffee table book on style, but there's also some deep reporting. It's deeply researched, and there's some substance behind it. So can you talk about balancing this beautiful book, but making it also have some meat to it?
Yeah, that was also really important to me, because I wanted to write a book. I wanted to write a full book. But then I also wanted it to be beautiful. My whole thing is about royal fashion and how they're close in a message, and you have to see those clothes. I wanted you to see them, in all their beautiful full page glory kind of thing. And what I didn't realize before I pitched the book was that sort of hybrid model is not all that common. And so it did take a little explaining in the pitch process. I think that there is, sorry, somebody's asking me to talk a little bit slower. I get carried away. In the proposal process, we made it very clear. The structure of the book was always in my mind, it was very clear. I just knew that I wanted to make it something that, you could sit down and read from start to finish, and it would flow and make sense, but it's also something that you could pick up and turn to any page. And these spreads, we call them, are meant to stand on their own too. And as a writer, that was a real challenge for me. But it was a good one too, because I think, especially from what I've seen on Instagram, people want to be able to like pick up and parachute in and, learn a little something and then drop out. And, we have busy lives and busy people. And so you could pick up anything and just read this, or you could start at the beginning of the Meghan section. And that was a challenge for me as a writer, but it was also really exciting, because I think doing something like this after writing newspaper stories and magazine articles, this is a much bigger project and an exciting one.
Well, delve a little bit into that hybrid thing, because there's not a big marketplace for that, or was it a struggle to sort of convince?
I think that people don't do that. I think in part, photos are really expensive, and I knew that going into it, and that was something. As we were doing the book deal, it went to auction, which was wonderful and so exciting, but we wanted to make sure we had a robust photo budget built in. And I also, in the end, went with a publisher who let me have a lot of control over the design of it. And I just wanted to be very hands-on, from everything from the cover to, every single page in here was me. And that was really important to me. And I think that this book represents the spirit of what I do on Instagram, which is highly visual, but also filled with insight and information. And I'm really proud of it.
Well, congratulations again. And I have to ask you about the photos because there are so many great photos. A lot of these that, many members of the public haven't seen that much or at all. And so I wondered how you made those decisions, how you did the research, how you know how you knew where to find some of these. Can you talk about that process?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of crazy. So the book is divided. The book covers the Queen, Diana, Kate, and Meghan, and there's an introduction, and then there's 4 sections. Each woman gets her own section because I do think each woman approaches fashion differently, and I thought that they deserved their own sort of style stories. And within that, I wanted each section opens with like a 5,000 word essay, sort of giving you biographical overview, but then also their approach to fashion. And then it's followed by dozens of pages of photographs of them sort of explaining their choices. And wrapping my arms around these 4 women, their biographies, their style, their photographs. I mean, there are thousands of photographs of all of these women, and they're very expensive. And so I actually brought in a wonderful friend and Wall Street Journal photo editor, Allison Diavola, helped me from start to finish. She was my sort of partner in all of this and helped me sort of whittle it down and negotiate with these photo agencies that own these, especially the older photographs are harder to find, and
Yes.
work with a budget and negotiate with them. And that there's so much about this process that was new for me. Reporting and writing was very familiar. The photographs, getting them, securing them, designing the book, that was all very new and intense, but I'm glad I did it. I was really committed to that. And I think the photos tell the story in so many ways, and putting it together and laying it out. And, we had scrapbooks and mock-ups and, cardboard printouts and all this stuff. But I think together, it sort of all comes together in a package that I hope people really enjoy.
How long did this take you from start to finish? Whether it was the time you spent writing or researching or photo researching?
So I sold the book in the late spring of 2019, and it came out in November 2020. So about 17 months or so. It was intense. It was a really intense time, but I was glad there were certain things I was very clear on. I wanted the book to be, coffee table worthy, but not so big that you couldn't pick it up and sit down and read it, or put it in your purse and carry it with you on the subway if you wanted to read it back when we were traveling. There were so many things I was very clear on, but then a lot of things we figured out as we went, and the pandemic sort of prolonged everything. But it was a real sprint of a process.
I really admire that kind of consideration in terms of the book size. I hadn't thought about that until you brought it up, but it is that size that you can fit into a bag or a knapsack or.
Yes.
Smart.
My dream when I was living in New York was that I would see, or I was hoping that I would go back to New York at some point and like be on the subway and see someone reading my book. It's those like little like New York writer things that really have stuck with me, and maybe one day, right?
Well, it's really valuable to hear you talk about these kinds of considerations, because in the end, details really matter,
Yeah.
And
no, I think that my whole thing is about, the meaning behind choices and appearances and a visual brand. And so when I was putting something of my own out there, I wanted to put every bit as much of thought into my book as these royal women put into their outfits.
Got it. Well, can you tell me anything? Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry about that. Can you tell me anything about whether there were any indications that the royal family has read the book or is aware of it? Or
I mean, I think they're aware of it. There's no I haven't gotten no confirmation of that. I mean, there's certainly, the internet is a crazy place, and I know that certainly people within the inner royal circle follow me on Instagram, and I try not to think too much about that stuff because I just want to make my commentary as sort of straightforward. And I don't know, thinking about that stuff makes me kind of nervous, but I think they're definitely aware of it.
Well, congratulations again on the book. What's next for you? Are you writing another book? Will it be on the royal family? Are you coming back to the Wall Street Journal? What's writing a book, I said to my husband I would never do this to him or my kids again. It was a really crazy time to do it and pull it off. But now that I'm on this side of it, I'm like,
oh, well, that was kind of fun. Maybe I should do that again. So I don't know. I need to give it a second to kind of recover. What I'm focused on right now is, I think there are a lot of opportunities out there for writers right now in terms of, self-publishing and growing their own audience and sort of formalizing a little bit of what I do. My Instagram thing started on a whim, and I've played around with a newsletter and a blog, and I'd like to just make that a little bit more official and work on growing that audience and perhaps monetizing it so I can hire someone to work with me, building that out a little bit. And then, a dream of mine, I have 3 small children and I would love to write a children's book someday. So I just got to put that out there in the world and maybe it'll happen. So we'll see.
Oh, I definitely read that. I don't even have kids, but I can read that. So
my kids have been asking when I'd write a book for them. So I tell them someday.
Oh, please do, because I have nieces and nephews, so they would love that.
I think it would be fun.
Well, if you could also just talk about, since you're continuing to follow the royal family, they were also in the news because of the Oprah interview. Yeah. And I have to ask you your thoughts on what Meghan wore for that, and whether there was any sort of signal she was sending to the world.
That was, what a bombshell interview. It was so, I think the revelations in that and the struggles that they faced, and certainly the racism from the royal family, was shocking to hear. But I think what Meghan did with her appearance that day was so carefully crafted. I will confess that when I first saw the pictures of her in that beautiful garden, Oprah was wearing sort of like a rose color, it was very soft, and there was Meghan in black, and you're like, oh, this is very harsh. Like, what is happening? But it was foreshadowing all that she was going to share. I think she had to wear something so serious, and it was beautiful, but it was very somber, right? And yes. I think at first I was like, wow, that's very intense. But then, yes, it had to be. And, she was where it had the lotus flower on there, and the lotus flower is a flower of, resilience. And I think it was really steeped with meaning. She was wearing, some jewelry from Princess Diana. So Diana was very much felt like a part of their conversation, and certainly felt like Diana was there with them. I think Meghan continues very much to choose things very thoughtfully. I would say more so than anybody else. Certainly Kate or Diana, Meghan entered the royal family very familiar with the power of fashion, having worked as an actress and, working with a costume designer. And yeah, I think she really, she's been fantastic with her royal wardrobe.
Is there anything to say about her maternity style? I know that's a very personal choice, obviously, but are there signals being sent there as well? She's not, she's technically out of the fold in terms of not there anymore, but I wonder.
No, but she's very, I think she's very cognizant of all this stuff. Since leaving the royal family, she had that fantastic trio of outfits on her last 3 appearances. And, she was that fantastic blue, red, green outfit. And then she sort of took a break from fashion in her Zoom appearances. It was all very sort of straightforward and nondescript. And now she's embraced her like pre-royal, like California, sophisticated, like relaxed style, and it's so refreshing. I think it's so exciting. You can see how happy she looks, and I think fashion can also it can send a specific message, but it can also make you feel things, right? It can make you feel how someone's feeling, and I think Meghan's doing a great job with that.
So Ray, I know we've got some Q&A here that I want to make sure that we cover. So I realize Ray can't see it right now on his phone, so that's why I don't mean to cut you off, Ray, but I wanted to make sure we get to some questions.
Sure.
So one of them, Elizabeth, is, did you interview Kate, Meghan, or the Queen for this book?
Yeah, so that's a question I've gotten a lot. No, the answer is they don't do that. They don't grant interviews. They don't talk a lot. And I think therein lies the power of fashion again, because Meghan obviously had that Oprah interview and she shared a lot, but that is the exception, not the rule. Oftentimes royal women are not talking a lot. They don't give big speeches. They don't give interviews. And so their clothes take on even more meaning. They speak for them in a way. And the photographs of them get so much attention and so much coverage. The other thing we need to talk about is that there's a whole economic element to this too. People, Kate or Meghan steps out, fashion blogs rush to cover it. They serve up a link. There's a shopping frenzy. There's a lot of real spending around it too. And so I think the royal women understand this, and they use it very much to their advantage to support brands and further, the fashion industry.
Now, was that the case? Did that start with Diana, or would that have been the case back when Elizabeth was maybe younger? Were people buying what Elizabeth wore back then, or did that really start with Diana?
There was a little bit of that with the queen, but she doesn't wear off the rack stuff. It's mostly bespoke, made for her, right? The excitement around royal fashion started very much with Diana, because she embraced trends and fashion, and she would get out of the car and you didn't know what she was going to wear. It was always so exciting, and she made it a reason to tune into something. I mean, even if there's a quote in my book from a photographer that was like, even if we didn't care about the engagement, we showed up to see what Diana would be wearing. And so it brings this attention. So Diana did a great job of it, but it was not often credited. So you didn't know who Diana was wearing, and there wasn't shopping around it. It wasn't sort of the same thing. She helped brands, certainly. But then when Kate hit the scene in 2010, 2011, it was a whole different story, because e-commerce was a thing. There were bloggers who could identify and serve up links immediately. Kate was shopping off the rack on the high street with her mom. You could buy what she was wearing. It just changed the whole game entirely.
So one of our questions is, what about the male royals? So do you ever look at what, I assume as much thought goes into what they're wearing, or is it not as big a deal?
No, it's a great question. I think they don't use fashion in the same way. They often wear a lot of the same things. I mean, all signs point to Prince Charles is very interested in fashion and certainly sustainability. And there are a lot of great pictures of him wearing the same suit or coat, over the decades kind of thing. I think we all should probably sit a little bit with why this burden is placed on women, the burden of presentation, and if that's unfair. But I do think that the royal women use it really effectively, and I commend them for that, honestly. At the end of the day, this book is supposed to be a celebration of that effort, because they know there's this attention on them, and rather than fight it, they use it to promote their royal work. Because if you like a picture of Kate or Meghan, then maybe you'll read a paragraph or two about what they're doing and understand their charity work or that kind of thing. And so it's an opening of a door in a way, and I think they do it great. But I will say that every now and then Will or Harry has a fashion moment and it gets a ton of attention, and then I'm like, yes, you're Diana's sons, this. Diana did this so well, and I think when they do opt into that, it is really exciting. So I'd like to see more of that.
Now, do you have a favorite outfit that for each of the women in your book? Do you have a favorite?
Oh my gosh. I mean, yes, I do. I'll flip through and find them. I think what I recognize about the Queen is just, I don't think she is somebody who is inherently interested in fashion, but she's very much recognized the power of fashion and the importance of fashion in her role. And I mean, the book has some fantastic, I can't even, I don't know how much you can see this, but like she wore these just phenomenal dresses, and I really, I think she understands the power of sort of making a splash. But nobody did that quite as well as Diana. I got to find my favorite Diana page here. Diana was a princess when everyone wanted a princess. Everybody expected her to show up and really wow, and she did. And so some of these pages in the book, I just sort of swoon over the ways in which she made a beautiful picture. And then Kate has been known for her relatable style. And I think there's real power in that too, that if you can see yourself in something that Kate is wearing, maybe you can see yourself in the royal family, and you can see yourself in this centuries old institution and get excited about it. And then Meghan really modernized royal fashion. She wore what a lot of us wear. I mean, ripped jeans, like amazing, right? It's like everybody wears that, but we hadn't seen it in the royal fold before. And so it was so exciting. So there's, each of these pictures are chosen with love. I love them all.
So we do have a question from Carol. Please talk about what the different clothing choices mean. For example, the hats.
Oh, well, so I'm not sure if there's a specific hat. They all sort of mean you're never going to know specifically, because the royal family will not come out and say, I wore this because of this. That's not how they operate. But what they do, I come back to this example a lot. This was Kate went on tour in Ireland in spring 2020. And the first day she wore a green coat. The next day she wore a white coat. And the third day she wore an orange sweater. And none of these looks on their own were particularly striking or all that unusual, but taken together, they formed the colors of the Irish flag. And you think like, wow, like that was really thought out. She knew that people would run montages of her outfits, and she's thinking enough to step back and say like each of these colors means something to the country that I'm visiting. And what a way to be a gracious guest, and to pay tribute to your host.
Now, so Elizabeth, I assume you watched The Crown.
Yes.
Now, so first of all, did they get it right? I mean, I realize they don't do the exact outfits, but I know they try to.
They try very hard. Yes, it's really impressive. And I think there's so much out there, especially as we're getting to more recent history, that there's a lot out there that they can draw on.
So are you a big fan? Do you think the wardrobe people are doing a good job?
I do. I think The Crown is dramatized, and I think it's important to sort of underscore that, because they do take a lot of liberty, but certainly with the fashion and the sets, they can make it seem so real, and that's thrilling to watch.
So we have another question. Asking, so how much do the hairstyles play into the fashion?
A lot. I mean, I think that started with Diana too. Diana's hair got a ton of attention, and one of my favorite anecdotes in the book, she, like, as her marriage was sort of falling apart and she was trying to distract, she put her hair in like a rare updo for an appearance. And she was heading out with Charles and looked miserable, but everybody was focused on the fact that her hair was up and not down. And just thinking of this is the example here, I mean, they were clearly like so estranged by that point, but she put her hair up and everyone's like, oh, Diana's wearing her hair up, not like, oh my gosh, like they're so cold to one another. So I think hair is just another, it's like another kind of accessory that they can play with.
So what did you think of Camilla's wedding outfit and the foliage headgear?
So I've gotten some questions about why Camilla is not in this book. I totally understand there are a lot of Camilla fans out there. I don't get the sense that she uses fashion quite the same way as the other women do, that she plays this game. And I don't blame her. I want to say that, like, following Diana would be impossible. And so I think it's also worth noting when women don't do this, when women don't participate in the game, if you see back here at home, Kamala Harris has had some wonderful fashion moments, but since she's been in office, it's been like a lot of dark suits. And so you know what to expect, and it's not a talking point, and it's not something that gets a lot of attention. And I think that's also a sign of how far we've come, that women don't have to play this game. Camilla's wedding outfit, I think she loves a big hat. If you look at her hats, Camilla has a fantastic hat wardrobe. And so if there's ever a time that she has a little fun, it's definitely with her hats, her headgear.
So how much do you know about who helps the royals choose and acquire their clothing?
I think this is another reason why it's so interesting. It's not like Hollywood. They don't have professional stylists that work with them, but they do have a team. So, and certainly as they get more senior, the Queen has a team of dressers that's, 9 or 10 people at this point that manage her wardrobe. So it's a huge logistical effort, but it's not like in Hollywood where, you call up some stylists and you borrow some fancy clothes and you wear them once kind of thing. These are teams of people. The Queen has it. Diana worked with some stylists to begin with and then sort of took over herself. Kate has a person, but it's also a lot of them. I think they're very involved in their choices. They're not just getting dressed by somebody, that they're picking out what they want to wear because they know how important it is. And I think that lends a real authenticity to what they wear.
So we have someone who chimed in saying, I'm most interested in the section about Queen Elizabeth. Please share your thoughts and research in detail. So that's pretty broad, but why don't you share something about Queen Elizabeth for us?
Of course. So I think that the Queen has really set the stage for the modern royal fashion that we watch today. And her, she ascended to the throne when she was 25 years old, and she was a young woman on a male-dominated global stage. And I think she understood that she would be heavily scrutinized, and she understood that her fashion needed to play a part. And so in those early days, she really dazzled on the world stage, and her beautiful, very feminine, very sort of trendy looks. But as time went on, she sort of settled into a uniform that worked really well for her. And it's all extremely purposeful. Those bright colors, are meant so she can be seen in a crowd or from the balcony. I mean, everything about the way her clothes are designed is about function as much as fashion. The armholes so she can shake hands and wave, the hem length so she can sit and, move around. I think it's all it's all a recognition that this is a working wardrobe, right? She's out and about meeting people. It needs to be functional as well as fashionable. And, she allowed her senior dresser to write a book that came out a couple of years ago now and sort of detail her wardrobe strategy. And I think that was a wonderful thing, because it's recognizing that fashion is not just about beautiful clothes. It's part of a job, and we can all learn something from that, I think.
Let's see. We do have a question also about Elizabeth. What's with Elizabeth's ubiquitous headscarf in bad weather? I assume that's function over fashion.
Yes,
but
well,
I'm wrong.
She's very old school, I have to say. She's always covering her head in public. You very rarely see her out and about without something on her head. And I think she's either wearing a hat when she's on a more formal daytime engagement, or she's wearing a headscarf, usually at, a horse event. And I think that's one of the few things that she buys from someone else. She buys those Hermes silk scarves. And I think that's, again, that's part of her visual brand. By wearing something over and over and over, you can close your eyes and picture the queen. And I think, you see somebody like Ruth Bader Ginsburg's collars, and when she passed away, everybody showed up in their collars, to pay tribute to her. Or on Inauguration Day, everybody was wearing pearls and Converse for Kamala. I think that's your legacy, your look in so many ways, and it's a way that people can celebrate and honor you. And there's so much of what Queen Elizabeth does so consistently that she'll be you could close your eyes and picture the queen. She'll be remembered forever for that.
So she's advised, someone entered this question, don't you think that she's advised on the use of color, etc.? So I assume,
she's got
she's got people who are advised.
She's got a senior dresser who is now also designing clothes for her. She also works with another person. She never picks just one person or brand, because it would be sort of an unseemly monopoly, but she keeps a very sort of narrow, she has her favorites. And I think that, again, it's just sort of a play for efficiency too. If she was bopping all over the place trying to wear different stuff, how time consuming that would be for her, for fittings and things like that. But yeah, she's got a whole team, and their job is to manage not just the clothes, but the jewels, which are their own, own big job.
So do you envision writing any more books on royal fashion?
I'm sitting with that right now. I'm trying to decide that, because I think there's so much more to say. The cutting room floor from this book is, littered with things I would have loved to include. And so I think there is a lot more to say. I'm trying to decide, as a writer, I didn't, I've gone very deep into the royals, and do I want to keep going deeper, or do I want to step back and look at other things? So we'll see. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I know I'm very interested in all the things that wound up on the cutting room floor. I want the sequel.
I could write a whole book
has
on
all
Diana.
of that information in it, and I bet other people on this call do as well. So we will definitely be buying So Many Thoughts, the sequel.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So I think at this point we are out of time, since we have so many events lined up for today. So first of all, Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us. As you can see, I am a royalist here.
I love that. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan
of your book. So thank you so much. And Ray, thank you so much for joining us and leading this discussion. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this session, and that we'll see you in some other sessions today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.